As we'll discuss shortly, my friend Kristopher Marentette has been here on the show a couple of times. Incredible musician, super dude. There's performance videos you can probably check on the link that's up there wherever. And hey, while you're here anyway and we're talking about links, make sure you subscribe and click on the links below for our incredible sponsors. If it wasn't for them, we couldn't do any of this stuff. So let's move on right to the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you my good friend, Mr. Kristopher Marentette. We're talking about games on this one.
This episode of the AVB Podcast, I'm hanging out in, for the second time for this show, but a little different circumstances, in the studio, I guess, for lack of a better term, right?
It's a term.
With Mr. Kristopher Marentette. How's it going, Chris?
Wonderful. How are you?
Absolutely awesome. This is the third time we've had you on the show.
Yeah, and my checks are still good, I guess.
Right, yeah, absolutely. So first time you came on was back in the days before we even had video.
Yep.
Just me and you sitting on the couch here having a chat.
Like old-timey radio.
Exactly. Second time we had you come out to the studio, do a bit of a performance for us.
Yes, thank you for that. That was wonderful.
Thank you for that. It was great. This time, you gave me a call, a little history for the audience or whatever. Yes. In addition to being an incredible musician and super fucking gadgety nerd and shit that we talked about last time,
yeah.
You also like to dabble in game development.
Yeah, it's yeah. I've been doing that ever since I was a kid. I think we all do, right? We all invent games and make up games.
No, that's where you're wrong. But
okay.
We'll move down that.
All right. I don't know. I was cursed with a fertile imagination,
right?
Which means that sometimes it gets the better of me, and I need to find an outlet to do something with it. And it was games. It was me and my brother hanging out, and we'd be like, oh, you go through the Uno and Go Fish. And
were
all
you a card player
Crazy
as a kid?
No. Well, I mean, Go Fish and Crazy Eights.
Sure.
I mean, War.
Yeah.
I never got into euchre or anything like. All my kids, I was ostracized from that whole club at school. I was
too nerdy for the nerds, eh?
I just didn't get it.
Okay.
Like I sat in on a couple things and I went, okay.
That it wasn't. That wasn't...
nothing grabbed me about it.
What came first for you, music or games?
Music for sure.
Oh yeah.
But music was cool because it was like a game.
Okay.
I think.
All
it was
right.
like a way that I could put things together that would entertain people.
Okay,
So
I gotcha.
I don't know. Terrible analogy, maybe.
No, not too bad. But games were still fairly young for you.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. A lot of them were like physically tactile games. Like a very early memory I have is of my brother and I. So my grandparents owned a flotation jacket company in Windsor.
Okay.
So they manufactured these full jacket emergency flotation jackets.
Mm-hmm.
And the boxes for this material and foam would like huge, flattish rectangular boxes.
Right.
Rectangular boxes. And so my brother and I, one day we got this one box and we cut slats in the sides and took the ears off another box and made paddles. And then we took this industrial glue that they had there and cut all the cardboard up in different shapes and pieces and glued them to the face of this thing and then put in a golf ball and made like a pinball machine.
A giant pinball?
Pinball machine.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, so I could be on one side with a paddle and he could be on the other side with a paddle.
Get the fuck out of here.
It was cool.
What did you use as the ball?
A golf ball.
Oh, a golf ball. Yeah, you said that. Okay.
It was fun. I mean, I think it lasted maybe two games before it was totally destroyed. And then, so that was pretty neat. And then, other ones were just born out of sheer boredom.
Okay.
Right. I can't believe I'm going to tell you this story, but
my favorite kind. Get into it.
So we used to go to my grandparents' house when they moved away from Windsor up to outside Toronto for every summer vacation, and it was great because there was nothing to do. Right, we were in the middle of the woods, and blah blah blah. But it was great because there was nothing to do. So you also had to there was no internet, none of that stuff. So this one night we're sitting around and my grandmother was, I'm not going to say a hoarder, that's a mean way of saying it, but she came from World War II Europe where everything was rationed. So when she came here to the land of plenty, it's like, no, we're not buying one thing of butter, we're buying 10 things of butter because we don't know when we're not going to be able to buy butter again.
So she was a hoarder, you just love her.
Right. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. Yes.
okay. Gotcha.
Anyway, so she would also keep all these containers of things that she did. Right.
Okay.
So if we entered, you remember Seal Test ice cream used to come in those big tubs or whatever. If we emptied one of those, that would never be thrown away. It would be washed. It would be put away.
And it'd be used as a thing to store shit in. Yeah.
So my brother and I are sitting around in the rec room one day, and it's this big, long room, and we just said, okay, go grab a couple of those bins. And so we grabbed these Steel Test bins, and we sat there on either end of the thing, and we took a yogurt lid, right? Mm-hmm. And the concept was you had to throw the lid
into the goal,
into the other person's thing. Which was crazy because those things don't fly straight, right? They go every which way and loose. And the most stupid part of the whole game was that the celebratory thing when you got one is you had to yell lid and do this little dance. Yeah. Anyway,
it's funny that it's funny because you say like I think everybody invents games. Now as kids you fuck around and play around and invent stuff that way, I guess. But I don't think like a lot of the game invention that I saw as kids was very much like, how do I make a game that you've already heard of, but a way that I can win it?
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Opportunistic invention, yeah.
And I mean, and like I said, I was starting to say I should give a bit of history, but in addition to the fact that talking about your history, even over the last year or so, I've spent some time in this room just play testing games with you.
Yeah.
And in those conversations, like we always have the, it's the conversation about how to make the game and that kind of thing, which I really want to get into in this thing. But one of the things that I'm always part of is like, how do I make sure that whatever is being said isn't just a way to play a game I've already played, but a way for me to win.
Yes.
And it's amazing the mental acrobatics people will do to avoid admitting that's all they're doing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Talk to me about that process. Did you think about? Did you
for this game that we're about to?
No, just in general. Like when you started inventing games and playing games, how did you, even as a kid, start to negotiate that idea that the rules of fairness were there for a reason?
Because I got screwed out of a lot of games.
Yeah,
like I was not a winning game player. Let's put it that way. And so I always assume that maybe it's not because I'm a shitty game player. Maybe it's because the rules are wrong. so
it is. How do I play this game the way I can win? Okay.
No, not just so I can win, but just, so everybody can win. Right. So I've said a million times before. My favorite philosophical line is nobody wins unless everybody wins. Right. And that. I mean, while there has to be a spirit of competition, and ultimately there has to be probably a victor. Right. The stuff that we're doing now is designed more around, a team-based thing, so that there are victors. Mm-hmm. So I think it makes it a little more equitable.
That's interesting.
But I don't know. I never really. See, I'm sure that there's this logical process that takes place where somebody says, "I have this beginning, and I would like to get to this goal." And then I can predefine all these steps that get me there. Yeah. I just don't do that.
That's not the kind of gaming you develop.
Yeah. Or
has that always been true? Like back in the day when you were creating giant pinball. Yeah. Were you thinking about this stuff?
I was thinking about, this is cool. I get to glue a bunch of cardboard shit together.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there were other games in high school. I invented this dice game called Tea and Crumpets because we were talking about tea and crumpets one day at lunch, and it made no sense. Right. I mean, like there were rules, and then we had this other one. It was like a miniature based version. What the heck is the name of that movie now? There was this movie that came out. You'll probably remember it. I think Rutger Hauer was in it. But it was like in a post-apocalyptic future,
right?
And it was like the game of football with a dog's skull, and you had to pin the skull on the stake. Yeah. And they had the guys with the big chain sweepers and the big, bats or whatever. Yep. So I made a tabletop version of that. And we called it Challenge of the Damned or some stupid thing like that. Right. But there were very much real, rules about, like this is the range of the guy with the chains and, all that kind of stuff.
It's so funny because like as you're sitting here talking, I remember, and like, dude, I've got like no memories of like grade school and shit, but I remember specifically there's a guy, his name was Steven, I can't remember his last name for the life of me. But we actually sat down at one point and started talking about developing a Revenge of the Nerds video game.
Oh, wow.
Like, we were 12.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, we were... and this is back in, like, Commodore 64, you know, like, that kind of programming shit. But I remember talking about, like, developing, like, very early. Like, we never got into the programming and stuff, but he kind of knew how to do that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like a movie buff, and there was boobs in Revenge of the Nerds, and I was 12, like I just said. Yeah. So, you know, that's all that is really required. So because there was all that sort of interesting, and, you know, I'm a geek or whatever, too, so it had all of those, like, tie-ins. But, like, I remember sitting down and going, like, okay, so the first challenge will be, like, you have to do this. Like, how do you build that? You know, how do you build the Olympics that they did? How do you do the panty raid in the game? That kind of thing. And I remember... sort of thinking about stuff even at that level, but we never got past the talking about it stage.
A lot of stuff never gets past the talking about it stage, yeah.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
That's not really the case with you. You're very much a, I have a stupid idea, let's do it kind of guy.
Again, it's the fertile imagination boredom thing, because then the other thing it takes over is, not that you look at it from my messy room here, but for certain things I have a really strong case of OCD.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have an idea and then I can kind of see where that idea is going to go, it'll drive me insane if I can't plot it out. Or not plot it out, but like figure out where the next step is and where the next step is and so on and so forth.
How long did it take you, or maybe not how long did it take you, I'm sort of implying my path on this, because I feel the same way about a lot of stuff. What came first to you? Completing it, like working on stuff and then realizing, oh, I finished this thing, or like coming up with ideas and like, oh, how would this work, and then finally being able to make it come together. Do you follow me?
The second way.
Okay.
So for example, I can give you the perfect example.
Yeah.
So the game we're launching, The Earth Is Ours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the idea came with, I guess the end goal was there were going to be two teams of people, one trying to destroy the Earth, one trying to save the Earth. In a completely cartoony, campish kind of way.
Right.
Go. Right.
Just start.
And then it was like,
how did like? Do you remember? I mean, we're moving all the
Inception?
way. Yeah, like we're moving all the way right to the specific game.
Well, no, we can go.
No. I'm since we're there, why not? Talk to me about the inception of the game. Where did it come from?
Okay. Well, to get there, we can go back.
Yeah.
Because the thing that really changed things for me was the discovery of D&D.
Great. Yeah.
Right.
I remember, just for some history here, I remember being a kid, seeing like the D&D commercials, seeing the D&D cartoon, and really wanting to find out what this game was. And not knowing anybody that knew anything about. I didn't know where to buy the books. I couldn't tell you any of that stuff.
Especially here.
And it wasn't until I was 16 or 17 years old. So like D&D came to me late. And man, once I found it, I fell in love with it and role playing and
I'm gonna go out on a limb.
Please do.
Just by virtue of how familiar we are with each other.
Yeah.
I think the thing that struck you about it was the same thing that struck me about it. Was that here's a constructed reality in which I can do whatever the fuck I want. And while there are rules to kind of encapsulate that, there is no specific, it's not chutes and ladders.
Yeah.
Right? It's not...
It's rules to how the world works as opposed to rules to how to finish the game.
But I can make my own narrative.
That's right.
I can do whatever I can think of, I can do. And that's what
I got really lucky. For anybody who might be watching this in the city of Windsor who is a gamer, I got really lucky because the people I started gaming with first was Dwayne Schaefer and Ian Getty, who were the original owners of Hugin and Munin. Ian now owns... is one of the owners of not Brimstone. I'm sorry, Ian. It's the other major.
Wizards?
Maybe, I forget. But like, these are guys who, where I got really lucky is they weren't gaming like rule lawyers, like rule Nazis, that kind of thing.
It's all about narrative.
What they cared about was the fucking story.
Yeah.
And if you find D&D under those circumstances, it's
transformative.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Book bunnies are great if you want to try and be as realistic as possible, but that's not what this is about.
And I don't even think you get realism out of it. I think.
Well, I mean, realism in the sense that, like, okay, I'm going to shoot you with an arrow. Okay, well, let's look at what type of arrow, how far away are you, what's the wind speed, what's the atmosphere, you know, blah, blah, blah. Who cares?
Yeah.
Right? Ultimately, in the story, I'm either going to hit you or I'm not going to hit you.
That's right.
And I'm going to hurt you or I'm not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
And to what degree?
Where min-maxers to me, or book buddies, whatever, are like, just like, all I want to do is make sure the numbers match. They're more mathematicians than gamers, right?
So, you know,
I shouldn't say that. More mathematicians than storytellers.
Yeah, they're or statisticians.
Yeah.
They're all about the analytics rather than the narrative. Which you know,
I think and those games attract both kinds of people, though.
Oh, for sure. Like you look at a system like D&D, which is very simple. You go to a system like Rollmaster, right? Which is books and books and charts and charts and charts. And that's the one that I first kind of got involved with because I saw all the charts and went, oh my god, numbers. This is great.
Well, see, and you know what? It's funny. Let's go down this road because I don't know. Obviously, people who are watching this, well, not necessarily obviously, but one would think that somebody watching this talking about gaming, they would have some experience in games. But if not necessarily, like my history, once I found D&D, I think we played it once or twice, and I thought it was great because I finally got to do it. But then I got shown Cyberpunk 2020.
Oh, yeah, okay. And so you get all the derivatives down the road.
Yeah. So it was like literally only played D&D once or twice, thought it was great, thought because I was playing a giant that I was like 30 feet, like I just got it all wrong kind of thing in my head. And, barking. And,
it's a security dog.
It's perfect. But then very, very rapidly got put into this like Cyberpunk 2020 where everything was like futuristic and like not... The thing with Cyberpunk was there was rules and there was dice rolling, but it was super simplified.
Yes.
Like it was just a D10. It wasn't 7 different kind of dice and whatever. It was just everything was a D10, and you could basically just run around and tell your stories. After that, I love Cyberpunk. I love the dynamics of it. I love the futuristic part of it. But there was also like that D&D thing, and then somebody showed me Palladium, and I was like,
So I got into that we used to play at a group at the university. Okay. And that was really cool because you could bring whatever you were working on at the time.
Yeah.
And these guys would play it with you.
Just no matter what.
No matter what. No questions asked. Just here, I've been working on this thing. I don't know if it's any good. I made one at that time. It was called Dragon Sim. It was literally a dragon simulator. So you were a dragon and it had the whole thing about, you know, flying and all that nonsense. And,
cool.
And it was great because they would just tell you, no, this is shit. You'd be like, yeah, okay, well, I can see that.
That's funny.
So Palladium, I got into it with Palladium, and then it moved into Rifts, right? That was the next thing. And the thing I didn't like about Kevin's work necessarily was I always felt like he kind of cheaped out. I thought he would take like existing Palladium system, throw a new cover on it, multiply the damage by 10, and oh look, here's a brand new.
You know what's funny? Yeah. I say Palladium because I learned later it was Palladium. What I got introduced to was Rifts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it very much was like I didn't understand the mechanics of it as well, so I couldn't compare it that way. What I liked was the idea of taking fairies and elves and dragons and and then adding a bunch of fucking cybernetic shit to them. You know what I mean? And being able to tell that kind of story.
Yep. Which, you know, sort of leads down another path to a different game. But anyway. So, you know, in coming up with it, like that's what I loved was not only, you know, even if we take away or we reduce the size of the universe from role-playing games back to just, you know, card games.
Right.
Or, you know, when card games became more like role-playing games, I never really got into Magic so much, but there were other like Zombies, Gloom, all this type of things that.
And then even D&D started putting out their own card games.
Yeah, when they saw the popularity of Wizards of the Coast, and but for me, it wasn't so much about the game. I mean, the games were fun, right? But it was the fact that I was hanging out with a group of people, like good friends, and we were just having a blast. And I love digital gaming. Okay, I'm not a huge video gamer. I used to be. I'm not anymore. I just don't have time or the money. But there is something fundamentally different about sitting around a table with a group of friends.
Yep.
There is a community-like feeling there that you absolutely, I don't care how many chat rooms or VR glasses or full immersion tanks you want to put yourself into, video games are not there. I don't think they're ever going to get there.
Well, there's also the shared disconnected experience of playing a game like that
Right.
versus having it shown in front of you, right?
Right.
Like, we're all playing the same game, we're all being given the same information, but every person, you can have 3 people or 10 people sitting at a table playing D&D, every person is looking at that story completely differently.
Yeah.
And your job is to
Coordinate.
Yeah. Tough thing to do sometimes.
Very much so. Very much so. But it's like, you know, if you were going to have this interview,
Yeah.
would you rather have this interview sitting here with me personally and interacting personally, or would you rather do it over Skype?
I mean, I think that's obvious by the fact that we've turned down Skype interviews over and over again here.
But that's the point, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at, is that the digital gaming experience, while it's great, it's, you know, it's beautiful, right? I mean, certainly the video game artwork has come light years from where it used to be. The stories are great, and it's full of action for sure.
And yeah, for sure, the storylines, especially in video games, like they've taken over movie storylines.
Yeah,
as far as
for
I'm
sure.
concerned. Yeah.
But for me, it's always been that
The communal
personal
thing.
connection, you
Yeah.
know, like, and so that's why, you know, this game development company, and I should say it's not just me,
Right, yeah.
I should have done this right at the very beginning. So it's myself, it's my good friend Sean Murphy, and our good friend David Duke. So David's the artist, and
Incredible artwork too, by the way. Let's take a side fucking glance on this. That's one thing I will say. Look, for those of you at home who don't quite understand, I mean, there's places you can click to go see what we're talking about, and that's fine. We'll put links and everything up. But when you're sitting here listening to us have this conversation, we're talking about he developed a game. It's a card game, and that's all cool and stuff. But holy fuck, this thing looks beautiful. The amount, like the artwork that's put into this is like, I would hang some of these fucking, like, they're cartoon style artworks.
It's campy cartoon,
but
it's art.
The work that is involved in these cards, I would fucking hang these things up as posters on my wall. They're beautiful.
And that's all David.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's 100%. We had, Sean and I had, I mean, ultimately it's a 3-way veto, right? So I mean, if something comes up and it's not quite right, we can go,
Right.
I mean, it's beautiful, but that never happened, not once.
Yeah.
Everything David has done has been beyond what we could even conceive. You know, it sounds like I'm stroking his ego here.
I already did it.
But,
So
but
it's,
yeah,
it's worth it.
there is nothing that I. So, for example, a couple years ago when we were first launching or designing this thing, and David had time to do. He did the fronts and the backs, and a couple of other little pieces of art, and then said, "Guys, I'm too busy. I can't do this anymore." You know, and it's because he's a benevolent guy. He takes on almost everything that's thrown at him, and genuinely wants to help everybody who wants help and work with all these people. Anyway, he had to back out, and he gave us, you know, we went and tried to find other people. He gave us the names of a few people, and we settled on one guy, and it's just, how do you go from what he was producing? Nothing against this other guy, because what he was doing was good.
It just didn't stand
It
up.
wasn't great.
And the thing is too is that I think knowing what I know about the game itself and your origins of the game and what you were looking for, the style, I don't think you could. It doesn't matter what other artists you brought in, the style just would not fit the same.
It would have been and again, not to knock the other person's abilities.
It could have been any other artist.
It could have been anybody,
and it would have been
a cheap replica.
I'll say it for you, because it's 100%. I absolutely agree with what you're saying. Tell me, now that we know all the people, all the players involved, but primarily this is a thing that you've pushed forward, right? Like, everybody's been involved. Don't get me wrong, but like this is something that you're really driven by, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
You know, and to go back to the origin of it, you know, one day we were sitting in the living room, and my son said, you know, he's like, you know, it would be cool if there was like a game to destroy the Earth. And I went, well, I think we're playing that game right now.
Not
you
to
know,
get too political.
Yeah, but then you know, I thought, well, maybe what if you had, like, you know, people against each other? You know, like one team was trying to save the planet, and one team was trying to destroy it, and then I mentioned it to Sean. So Sean is you want to talk somebody obsessed by games.
Yeah.
This guy has spent probably some people's salaries on games. He plays with a group of his friends. They've been playing ever since they were teens. They still play religiously every Sunday. Mm-hmm. They probably have between 700 to 800 games.
Wow.
In this collective. So if there's an idea that's been germinated into something, he knows about it.
Right.
I mean, he's a mechanics guy. He's a design guy. He's got a super imagination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you put the two of us together, and it's cool.
Talk to me about that, because like one of the things about playing a game, like you said, is bringing a room full of people together and kind of putting it that way.
Yeah.
What's it like to play a game in your head without having a game to play? With one other person.
Super cool.
Okay.
Because you get to try all the shit that doesn't work.
Right.
That's what people don't see when they see the finished product. It's like, oh, yeah, wow, that mechanic works great.
Mm-hmm.
I love how this, negates that or this augments that. What they don't see is the 400 other iterations where, yeah, that math doesn't work, or yeah, that screws up the logic for the whole thing, or if we do that, the game's over and we've been playing for 2 minutes.
Right.
So it's cool, and being able to work with somebody else like Sean, who is so smart that, he's often 10 or 12 steps ahead in the flow, the mechanics flow or the logic flow of where I am, because I'm stupid. I get real excited in the moment, right? I'm like, look at this! This is the best thing ever! Let's do... And he's like, you can't do that because like 10 steps down the road, that's going to screw that up. I'm like, fuck you, Sean! This is a great idea!
But I was having fun!
Yeah, I was having fun! But luckily, and the weird thing about this game is, I went back to work the next day and I said to Sean, have you ever thought about making games? He's like, all the time. I'm like, oh, cool. Me too. I have this idea.
And then you guys made out for a little while.
Yeah, it was a little heavy petting, and then over cigarettes later.
Right.
I said, well, I have this idea. And he said, oh, okay, that's cool. And he went to his office, and I went to my office. And then about 5 minutes later, we both found ourselves walking back toward the other person's thing saying, what if it was like this? We went, oh, okay, cool. What if we did it this way? And from that day, it was 2 days before the first prototype was done. Playable.
Wow. Like with cards and shit? Like
no, at that point, well, they were, yeah, so I'll give you photos that we have.
Okay.
Of basically all we did was we took, 8.5 by 11 paper and a paper cutter, chopped them up into roughly the same size cards, and wrote on what they were going to do. Right. And then we graduated. From there, we graduated to index cards. Right. Right, so we had this big bulky thing of index cards. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we moved on to prototyping cards. Once we had, finalized the way that we were going to do it. Because originally the game was a lot more complicated. It involved dice and the cards, and it was a little overcomplicated.
I want to talk. I'm sort of split. I've got two things that are really interesting me right now. We'll try to come back to this one. The one that I'm wondering mostly about with the way you develop this. So like you said, you ran into him, you talked about an idea, you walked away, and then you just found each other again. You went, hey, what about... Mm-hmm. To me, that sounds almost identical to the way songwriting works.
Yeah, I think you're right.
When you're working with a group, I should say. You know what I mean? Like when you're working with a band, when you're writing. Did you think about that at all?
No.
Okay.
No, not until this moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that process is very much like, it's kind of like bounce it back and forth, right?
I come to you with a riff, you come to me with a lyric.
I'm the guitar player, you're the drummer, but we're going to kind of bring it together, right?
Yeah.
So what's your instrument?
That's where it differs, I think, because in something like this,
you kind of have to play the whole band.
I think you have to play the orchestra, right? I think you have to have your hands on everything.
Clearly you have some specialties that Sean doesn't, and vice versa, though, right?
Sean has way more specialties than I do.
Right, but you definitely have some that he doesn't have. If you didn't, you guys wouldn't be able to work
more
together.
Refined, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe more refined.
Right.
In the sense that I'm way more of an idea guy.
Okay.
Okay. Sean is I'm going to call it an intellectual whittler. Okay. So he'll take this big idea log and take out his logic penknife and start whittling it down until we got something that we can use. Okay. I think.
That makes sense.
and then we bring it to David, and he takes this shitty piece of wood,
makes it beautiful.
Makes it a beautiful sculpture.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's where we work really, really well together. We started with a larger thing, and yeah, I don't know. You do have to wear all the hats.
Yeah.
And I think for some weird reason, I get what you're saying, that if we didn't bring different things, then we wouldn't be able to work together. But I think in this sense, we both just augment the strongest things in each other.
I mean, I understand that, but like I think you, and this kind of goes back to the conversation we had the first time we were on the podcast. You do a lot of discounting what you add into things, and I don't know what the opposite of discounting is, but like you add value. Not that they don't have value, but you see more value in what other people bring to what you're doing than what you bring to what you're doing. And that's been true for every project I've seen you work on. Ever.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just amazed that there are these people that are so...
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Oh, I fucking get it.
That want to be involved in what I'm doing, right?
But you do understand the fact that you surround yourself with those people is like a thing that is important to have happen, right?
For sure.
Because like those people would just be out there doing whatever the fuck they do if they didn't have a guy like you to bring them together to do the thing you're doing.
Right. I would. Okay.
Do you get that part of it?
It's kind of like a Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
In the sense that there's this guy who's really super passionate about it and has this great idea and has no fucking clue how to get real world shit done.
Yeah.
Right? So he finds a Woz.
Yeah.
And the Woz comes in and goes, okay,
all right,
simmer down.
Yeah. All right, now that the cameras are off, go fucking take a nap.
Bye. So I'm not that far removed from the process, but I think that I'm definitely more of the idea guy.
Yeah.
I say tongue in cheek that I'm stupid.
Right.
But I mean, I do my share of the mechanics and all that kind of the logic and all that kind of stuff. It's just there are people that are better at it.
Right.
And I would rather have that.
And it's also, and like, look, I come from the same spot, right? Like, I've always kind of put myself in that position too. Surround yourself with fucking geniuses so I can be the idiot.
That's
like,
right.
You know what I mean?
So you can be the genius.
Yeah, right. But it's kind of, I don't know. You and I have had so many of these conversations where at the end of it, your response, and I get, like, you're a humble dude, and I get that, but like, there's a lot of time when I don't know if you're just being humble or just don't understand the value that you add to these things. Because man, you work, like, for those of you in the audience who don't know Chris and don't know Chris's history, you play in, and I don't think I'm exaggerating here, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 3,000 or 4,000 different bands.
Yeah, probably.
Right? And like probably play in the neighborhood of 14 to 15 nights a week, plus have a job.
Yeah.
Plus develop games, and then on Monday nights I'd come over here and we'd fucking play around for a couple of hours. Like, it's you get more packed into the fucking 7 days a week than there is 7 days in the week.
That's the fertile imagination driving you crazy syndrome,
And I just wonder if you've just resigned yourself to the fact that I'm just a crazy asshole, or if you understand like that's kind of genius.
I think I resigned myself that I'm a crazy asshole.
All right, you're wrong. I don't know. It's brilliant to me because we talk a lot to and about and for creative people, right? And it's always interesting to me that no matter what level of creative person you talk to, you're only ever usually seeing one level of the creativity.
Okay.
But you're a guy that every time I talk to you, there's another level. Like, there's another layer. Like, it's always something that's being worked on.
Okay.
And I think for a lot of people, they may have the interest or like the desire, like, oh, I'd like to do that some fucking day, and then they go home and nap. Mm-hmm. You don't do that.
Yeah, napping is...
And you've got a family. Like, you've got every...
I've been told.
Yeah. I think I was in the room with them once.
Yeah.
Where does that drive, dude? Like, where is it mental illness, or is it
no, it probably is. In all seriousness, it probably is somewhat in the sense that, very early on, I realized I'm not going to be here forever.
Right.
And I've got one shot at this. And that means I need to do whatever I can possibly do to make sure that I'm getting the most out of what I'm doing. I guess, esoterically,
dude, so here's the thing, and I'm going to be very straight up, and I'm probably going to leave this as part of the show. You and I, because of what you just brought up, you and I want to talk to you about something, but you brought me in here to talk about the company and the gaming company. One of the things that I know about you is religiously you and I have very much the same viewpoint.
Yeah.
Stone cold atheist almost from day one. Grew up in the Catholic. Did you grow up in the Catholic Church?
Lutheran.
Okay, so I grew up in the Catholic Church and caught on to the nonsense real early on. I think you were about the same. You're very passionate when you have this conversation. And it's funny to me, I almost wonder, because of the phrasing that you said, because you look at the world, and you know what, even to stay away from any sort of controversy or whatever, just the very basics, whether you're a person at home that believe or not, you understand that neither he nor I do believe that there's something after death here. That's a real fucking good reason to not sleep the extra 3 hours.
It gives me every opportunity to be the absolute best version of myself I can be at any given time, because there's an end date. I have an expiration date. Right. And I'm not going to come back as a llama and try it again from a llama point of view, right? Or I'm not going to go on to move on to something else. This is it.
Yeah.
Right? It's a motivator, and it's also a huge detractor at times, because it can feel very overwhelming.
Okay.
Especially like you said, where if you spread yourself very thinly and you have all of these things going on,
you feel like you accomplished nothing.
Right. I feel like you're constantly chasing your tail, right? Did I get this done? Nope, because I had to do this, and I had to do this, and I had to do this. And then you worry about, I mean, you brought up, family, and jokingly, I said, oh, I've been told, but the sad reality of it is that one of the things that I will take to my grave is probably a huge disappointment in the secondary place that I've put that in order to accomplish all these other things.
I totally understand that.
Like an absentee father by choice, which makes me the biggest asshole on the planet.
Oh, no.
However,
second biggest asshole, because here's the thing, you're saying it now that like I chose to be a secondary, an absentee father. I specifically, as a truck driver, said there's no fucking way I'm going to be an absentee father. The second my wife was pregnant for my oldest daughter, I gave up being on the road full time and just went into being local, and then proceeded to take every minute of my extra time and focus it on everything but my family.
Yeah. And I don't know, a really good friend to me one day, as we were kind of just sitting down over beer one day, said to me, I don't know why I can't be the guy that just goes to work, comes home, and is happy. And I said, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I don't think that guy exists, does he?
And he said, the guy that is his life is his job and his family, and that's it. He goes, I don't understand why I feel like I constantly am either in the wrong place or doing the wrong thing, or I'm not enough. And I just went, like you're describing.
Yeah, that's not just me.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we can make a support group for this. Right. And that's exactly the thing. And that question, there are two things that haunt me all the time in the back of my head. One is a line from the fantastic graphic novel American Splendor, where the character walks by a mirror. And he looks in the mirror and he says, now there's a reliable disappointment. That is in the back of my head all the time.
That's funny.
And the other one is, why can't I be one of these guys who just goes home and is happy? And
I don't know that those motherfuckers exist.
And it's not, I really don't want to make the case that having a home life and having a family is unhappiness. It's not it at all.
Yeah, no.
I love.
No, but I totally get it, because I absolutely get it, because, and again, you've got you've got like a brood. Right?
Yeah, I've got like at least 87 children.
Right. So yeah, just like everything that you do, 950 of them.
Yeah.
I got just the 2. I managed to, dodge all the other bullets. But wife, kids, love them to death. Like we, do family stuff, all of that. But man, every minute I feel like I'm not quite doing like the dad thing enough.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, the game I can put away on a shelf and come back to. My son's going to college this year.
Right.
Last time I turned around and looked at him, he was 4 years old.
Right.
That's how it feels.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And then all of a sudden I've got all this time that I've done all these really neat things.
But it doesn't feel like you did it with them.
And the neatest thing maybe
right
is been left by the wayside.
But see, that's the thing. The only way, and I mean, coming from a position where I think the exact same way, I think the only way, and here, lay it all on the table. I think the bullshit that I tell myself to make me feel better is that really, for me, what it is the only way I know how to teach my kids is what I want for my kids is for them to go out and grab life by the fucking balls and do every fucking thing they can in this world. And the only way I can teach them to do that is by doing it myself.
Yeah.
You don't teach your kids to smoke cigarettes, you don't teach your kids to drink alcohol. You just smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol and they start, you know what I mean?
And to that point, you can't be the guy that comes home miserable every day and then tells your kids to go out and take what you want.
Yeah.
Just like I'm not doing.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, because I mean, did it for so many years, and that's the thing, it takes a fucking toll, right? Yeah. You go home, and when you're home, you're pissed off that you're not doing the other things, and then all the kids see is that dad's pissed off.
Yeah.
It's
like an inbuilt resentment. It's like, well, why is he resentful that he has to be here, or whatever? Which is not the case. It's just, you're looking over the mental checklist and going, really, I should be doing this, I should be doing that.
And especially as a kid, because as a kid, you don't see all the other
you can't calculate that. You can't fathom that at all at that age.
Has that been, like, obviously it's something that's weighed on you and it's something that you've thought about, but have you, like, you had to have a moment either with yourself, with your wife, whatever, where it was like, okay, I feel like a complete piece of shit, but no, we're okay? Like...
what day is it?
Every day?
That's a common conversation. Look, the point being, everybody does the best that they can do, right? Or hopefully, everybody tries to do the best that they can do. I realized a long time ago that primarily the music thing, but all of these other neat little ventures and all that kind of stuff, that's what I need to do in order to not swallow a shotgun.
Hey, I get that.
Not to put it bluntly.
Yep, no, right? I totally get that. Absolutely.
But, if I didn't have those things... I realize I'm never going to be the guy that's just going to be happy like that. This is never going to happen. So we've had that conversation that I need to do these things. Fundamentally need to do these things, which may be a mental illness, right?
I mean, I understand that part of it.
So
and let me ask you, what was that conversation like with your wife?
Awkward. Awkward in the sense that I didn't know how to phrase it without saying you're not enough.
Oh, you know what? That's interesting. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
I never thought about it that way.
That's a very alienating conversation. You go to your partner and you say, hey, love what we're doing here. It's not enough for me. Now, you replace that with any other context, right? And it's... you're basically telling them that they're insufficient. And in this respect, it's going to...
You know what's funny about that? You're absolutely right. And the fact that I and most people never think about that is probably a failing in them and a real success for you.
Well, I don't know that it's a success, but what it did give me the opportunity to do was maybe change my phrasing a little bit when we had the conversation. Absolutely, the biggest thing with that conversation was the fact that, my wife was 100% supportive. Mm-hmm. Like, not even bat an eye. Like, absolutely, you need to be doing this. There is no question.
It's tough to get into a partner. I've been lucky enough the same way, the same thing.
And I mean, that's probably why we're still with them.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
I mean, because that...
Otherwise, you'd just be locked in a room by yourself because no other human being would deal with
That's
you.
right.
Yeah.
And there are very few human beings that will deal with me because I'm...
Hey, I get it.
I'm driven to do what I'm doing. I'm extremely opinionated about what I'm doing, and I do not suffer fools easily.
It's hilarious because we just literally, like, the audience will probably see these either back to back or a couple of weeks apart, but literally just left the interview with Andrew McLeod, and that's his exact position. Like, look, I want to be around everybody and hang out with everybody, but at the end of the day, I do not suffer fucking fools. And I've got shit that I want to do, and this is what it takes to do it.
Yeah,
it's alienating.
It is. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to be an asshole about it. Right?
Yeah, but it usually takes us a long time to figure that out.
Right, but in the sense that, like, I'm not going to say, for example, to my children who will say, "Oh, let's go do this." No, fuck you. I'm going to go do this. It's a different conversation. Yeah,
absolutely.
But anyway, I mean, so I think the expiration date
thing is
right
a real...
to come back around to that is a real driving force between I realize I don't have the time to waste, so I need to do the things that are important to me, and that's a hugely selfish thing to say, but at the end of the day,
the more and more I think about this stuff, and the more and more I get put in a position where I have to think about the term selfishness, I start to realize how wrong-headed the term selfishness is.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No. It's just that in the end, regardless of anybody else that you've surrounded yourself with, and anybody else that you've created relationships with, and anything else that you've ever done with anybody else, it ultimately only comes down to this.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, at the end of my time, and when my expiration date is called, if I'm lying there on that hospital bed waiting for that last breath, and if I can look back and go, you know what? I did pretty much everything I wanted to do. That for me is good. Where I don't want to be is, look at how happy I made everybody else.
Yes.
What a miserable piece of shit I am.
Right. Because been down that road. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
Like spent the majority of what is my life up to this point. Not like, don't get me wrong, I wasn't fucking benevolent. I wasn't running around being a fucking saint and doing everything I could for other human beings, but like every decision I made had some factor of like, despite every pronouncement against this, I don't care what people think. Every fucking decision I made had some sort of element of, but what will people say, or how will this be perceived, and it wasn't until I honestly didn't fucking care anymore that anything even started coming together. Because and that's what I meant by like that idea of selfishness is so wrong-headed. Until you figure out what you want to do and why, and you have to be selfish about that because it's about you and no one else. Yeah. Until you figure that out, you're fucking worthless to anybody anyway.
And you know what the crazy thing to me is? That we tell people this all the time.
And nobody listens.
Right. You know what the phrasing they use is? You have to love yourself before you can love somebody else.
Yeah.
But that applies to everything.
Yeah.
You have to be true to that person that you are before you can be truthful with anybody else. All you're going to do is spend the rest of your life telling lies to everybody.
Yep.
To try to make them happy.
It's ironically for reasons that will not make sense to anybody watching this, it comes down to why. The question of why, I think, is... I'm about to go on a fucking limb here.
Do it.
Spent 2 years going into, this is the third year of this podcast. And I don't know if I've said it before on the show or just in passing with people, but mostly why I do all of this stuff is because I've been searching for a reason that people do anything. You know what I mean? Like, and the answer to that question of like, why do people do the stupid shit that people do? And by stupid shit, I mean all the stupid shit. Whether it's, fucking marching in Nazi rallies or inventing a video game. Like, you know what I mean? Like, everything we do as human beings is just a little bit fucking dumb. Why is it that we spend so much time doing it? There's always a reason to do something else. And if you have a conversation with people, there's always these other reasons. And I think it really comes down to just... that, like, if you understand, because the why doesn't matter except it's the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter why you do anything. You can do anything for any reason, but you better have a fucking reason.
Well, I think maybe a different way of saying that is the why is irrelevant to anybody but the person doing it.
Yeah. But I think that why is the explanation. Like that, like just the question itself. The question why is actually the answer. A little bit of fucking Jeopardy here. If the person I'm talking to is somebody who impresses me, is somebody that is doing work that I think is worth talking about, almost exclusively, it's because if I really get down and ask them why they're doing what they're doing, they have an answer. The people that tend to impress me less are the people that when I ask them why are they doing what they're doing, they go, well, it's the thing I do kind.
Yeah, not interested. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's why I love to argue with people. Okay. No, seriously.
Yeah, no,
and I want to define that my definition of argument is intelligent, rational discourse.
Right.
Okay. So it doesn't mean that I'm yelling at you and I'm calling you a fucking moron.
Right.
It means that what I'm doing is you're presenting me with a set of beliefs and I'm presenting you with a set of beliefs.
Yep.
I'm going to challenge your beliefs. You and I may believe the same thing. I'm still going to challenge you on it because only two possible outcomes are going to occur from that, right? Well, I guess three. One, you're going to punch me in the face and the conversation's going to be over. But if that doesn't happen and the conversation goes on, only two possible outcomes come from that. One, you are going to bear down and become more firmly entrenched in your beliefs because something is going to ring truer to you because you've had to defend them. Or two, you're going to change the way that you think because you've realized that there's a different set of rules or beliefs or whatever that make more sense to you. Both of those are positive. There's not a negative thing in either one of those.
Right.
So I love to argue with people because I'm not even interested in the argument. I'm interested in the outcome of the argument. Right. Which and I get maybe that leads back to all this whole
because
thing.
you're testing the boundaries, right? It's funny because
it goes back to tell me why.
Yeah. But it also goes back to that idea of the gamer, right? Like the game development. It's sort of like you've got to test your theories. You've got to when somebody tells you this is a thing that they believe in, okay, fine, you can believe that. We all have our opinions or whatever, but can you explain to me why you believe it? And I just put less stock into people that can't.
Well, because most people will present it as a fundamental thing for them.
Having not spent any time even questioning themselves why they think it's a fundamental thing.
So when you ask somebody, why do you fundamentally believe this? And they can't tell you, well, that tells me that you don't believe it.
Yeah, what confuses me is like that I make sense of. Like when somebody and again, this is going to be all hyperbole, and I understand that saying it, but it's definitive hyperbole, which is my new favorite phrase.
Nice.
I'm always amazed, like when people don't have the answer to why and they think stupid shit. I get it. That makes complete sense to me. It's when they stand on stupid hill with a mountain full of like, well, this is what backs up all of the things I believe, and just blatantly ignore the fact that a lot of the stuff that they're holding on to just is outright infactual.
Yep. Is that a word? Willful ignorance.
Yeah. Is infactual a word?
It is now.
I invented it, motherfucker. I love English. So, beauty of a living language. You know what I mean?
No, I have had, as of recent, so many conversations along this. I'm sure that somewhere out there somebody's collecting a Facebook thing of my stories, but I agree. The whole thing of like if you stand by your thinking when so many other piles of demonstrable, repeatable evidence runs contrary to your thought and can't change that thought, well, there's no hope for you.
Well, I mean, in that case, to me, what always stands out to me, And I mean, we're talking about politics here, obviously, but this kind of.
Oh, I was talking about politics. Oh, yeah. I mean,
see,
I guess,
that's the thing.
yeah.
You know what's funny is that one of the problems with this conversation, the way we're having it, is because it is true because we're not locking it into any specifics. But anybody watching this is going to lock it into the specific bullshit they're locking into.
Yes, of course.
So whether it's the religious thing, the politics thing, flat Earth,
Yep.
whatever the thing is,
Yeah.
because the way we're talking about it is now the way that conversation happens, no matter what side of stupid hill you live on.
That's right.
And I don't worry about, like, saying I worry about humanity is just a little over fucking dramatic for me, but like, I'm so interested in watching discourse happen online and having people think that it's different online than it ever was in any other form of discourse. The stuff that's happening in our world today looks no different than it happened when the printing press was brand new.
For sure. I think the only thing that makes it different about it being online...
Scalability.
No, well, okay, sure. But the bravery of being out of range, right? I don't have to be facing you.
That was true with the printing press.
I know, but...
Oh, the continued conversation
I think
from
it's
it?
more... There's more anonymity there. Somehow. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not.
To me, and you may very well be right. It's just that's an argument I've heard a lot, and I don't think I put as much stock into it because I think what the difference is, and is the scalability issue. Because if you think about it, like when the printing press first came out, so to sort of like lock this idea down a little bit more is, to me, it's about the dissemination of information, right? So before there was printing presses, the way you got your information was by talking to your neighbor.
Yeah,
that's why it was that's why it was so important to know who your neighbors were and
Incidentally, why it was so important to have songs, because songs were
so you could remember them.
Dissemination with melody. Yeah,
100%. So and I mean, and I'm sure if we were able to go back. And as a matter of fact, I know because the conversation still happens in the media about how songs can ruin your children and music today.
Well, you remember that old Neanderthal "Trump is a fucktard" song, right? So I mean, it's been going with us for. Sorry, couldn't resist. Apologies to all my Trump-loving friends out there.
Both of them.
Yes.
So the idea being that, like, when you moved into the printing press days, you could take that piece of information, you could spread it out a little more. And the natural reaction to that is you are going to have some people who see the information and agree with it, and some people who see the information and disagree with it. The problem is, or not the problem, but the natural human inclination is as you start building, as the ability for more people to have access to that machine, that tool to get the information out, there are natural and simple things that happen with the way human beings take in information that are easily exploited by being able to access more people. When the printing press first came out, people jumped in, took control of it. The best example for me are your snake oil salesmen, right? They would literally go around, and because they had flyers that they could pass around to people and say, like, hey, the new magic elixir that's going to called Coca-Cola, which is, by the way, how it started. I don't know if people realize that. But, like, you could pass this information around, and people had nothing to back it up against. And so when somebody would say that stuff is not medicine, they go, well, of course it is. I've been told for whatever. Same thing now. When the misinformation gets out, it just gets to a greater number of people, and it's sort of like harder to control. Is that...
I agree and disagree. Okay, and it's not that I disagree, but in the sense that, like, I think we have to be a little more lenient on the snake oil salesman of the past because the science wasn't there yet. So everything by that point was by consensus of result.
I do tend to believe that most people, whether they were right or wrong about their facts, usually try to do the best thing they know how to do. Sure. That is a thing I believe about humanity. Right. Okay. Is that the line you were kind of going down?
Yeah, right. Exactly. The other thing I think is that it's so much easier to repeat the bullshit now.
Right.
In the sense that, like, if I was Gutenberg And not Steve, but the original, the original
Right.
Printing Press guy.
Nicely done, by
Sorry,
the way.
for those of you under the age of 40,
Who the fuck is Steve Gutenberg?
was a legend in the 1980s. Really, that thing on the car with 2 wheels in Police Academy, man, he had me right there.
Also, has a very, very weird story about coming out in public when, and I'm probably going to get the facts wrong about this, but I think it was when Roy from The Magicians,
Siegfried and Roy?
Siegfried and
Yeah.
Roy, when he got his head bitten off
Yeah.
by the, I think he like just came out of the woodwork and started doing anyway, total
Weird.
total tangent on that
So
one.
when not Steve Gutenberg
Right.
invented the printing press,
Yeah.
right before the Police Academy movies, the point was like there was an inordinate amount of effort involved to set the type, because literally people don't understand that the word typesetting came from
You
would take pieces of lead letters and line them up on a board and make sure that's where your point size came from
Yep.
this piece of text is 10
this many
points of
yeah.
lead or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you were going to go out of your way to spread misinformation,
You had to be motivated.
you had to be one motivated medieval motherfucker back then. Yeah. And nowadays, all I have to do is I have to look at my Facebook feed and click share.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that helps
Yeah.
in the spread of the nonsense. But
Yeah, I think that might come down to scalability too, right?
Well, you're exactly right.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
exactly right. Yeah.
It's funny because I just checked our time and like we're already well into an hour with this,
Oh,
and
and
we
we haven't really-
we barely talked about the game.
Okay,
and stuff.
so-
So let's cover the
Yeah,
the game.
okay.
Thank you for hanging out with this entire conversation, Chris. Thank you for hanging out for that part of the conversation.
Yeah.
But this is why we're here. After all of this, understand that there is a cool fucking game coming out.
Yeah.
That was developed by this guy and his team that I had the pleasure of doing some testing on. So tell people about the game.
Okay, perfect. So the game is called The Earth Is Ours, and it works in a team play atmosphere. So you have one team, the benevolent people who want to save the Earth, called the Benevolaites, the nefarious evil people, called the Nefarians, that want to destroy the Earth. And
Writing genius.
yes, and the way that you can do this is you can affect the Earth in one of right now 5 different areas. You can affect it technologically, economically, environmentally, industrially, or politically. So as an example, and we can put links up, right? So I can.
Oh, of course,
I can
yeah.
show,
There'll be links
images
to all
the-
of this stuff. Yeah, yeah.
So what happens is, let's take the roles right now. So I'm the Nefarians because I'm an evil bastard,
Right.
and you're such a great guy. You're the Benevolent, of course. So we have the political arena here, and in my hand of cards that I have my ways of negatively affecting politics.
Right.
So I would say, okay, I have reams of rigged results, right, for voter fraud.
And by
or
the
whatever.
way, my favorite part of this fucking game is the alliteration.
Yeah, every single card is alliterated, every single one. So it's so it took forever,
Yep.
but it was great. So I would put that down, and I would try to, if I successfully affect it negatively, it means that I get a point.
Right.
Okay. Everybody on your team, assuming it's not just you, but we have a group of people, everybody on your team has the ability to attack that move that I just made, and everybody on my team has the ability to defend
Boost
that
it.
move.
Yeah.
Okay, so it basically just comes down to, this is the color purple, let's say, right, for politics.
And
If you have
Prince.
that's right, and Whoopi Goldberg's early movie career. If your team has more purple attack cards than my team has purple defense cards,
Then we
it
win.
gets removed. I don't have that point anymore. If I have more defense than you have attack, it stays. We have a point. Once I've collected X number of points, which is decided at the beginning of the game, depends on how long you want the game to run. Once I've collected that amount of points, I have now constructed that component of my doomsday machine or my earth-saving machine. Once I've collected all the pieces and can build my machine, the game is over. At which point, much back to the old game of lid, the winning team has to stand up and proclaim. It's in the rules. Has to stand up and proclaim, "The Earth is ours."
Nice.
And I will tell you this: there is nothing more fascinating to me than when you get a group of people, regardless of age. We played this from age 10 to age 70.
I'm really glad you brought that up because in the testing sessions that I've been part of, we literally have played with people of just about every age
Yeah.
range. and I've not had one. Even the games where like, and I don't think it happened too much in this one, but even the games where like some stuff fell apart at one point, managed to like just have a blast with it.
Yeah, but there's nothing like, somebody playing a card and then everybody attack, defend. We played this at this one bar out in Leamington, and we didn't even have the right cards yet. These were just still the paper blanks.
Right.
We had a fucking group of people around us that were just like, how do we play?
So much fun.
The very first play testing we had with this, Jay, one of the guys that was playing it, at the end of it, he took out his wallet. He's like, how much is it?
Yeah, it's great. It was so much fun. We play tested at least 4 or 5 different games.
Yeah, so this is only the first one.
Yeah.
This is the first one that's being launched.
Yeah,
right?
I will also say that of all the games that we play tested, the one exception being the role-playing one, which is just my bread and butter. Of all the games we've played other than that one, this has been, I think it's also the most complete, which is...
It is, for sure.
But it was the most fun. It was so much fun. And the other thing, too, that I love about this game and all games in general is just how much it tells you that math is the right way to think, because they literally can tell you how long you're going to play by setting X amount of rules, and it'll say this is going to take you 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
You will know it takes you 3 to 4 hours based on this amount of points.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can tell how long a game is going to be played, a game like that, just based on the numbers of the points is just amazing to me.
It's a great mechanic.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You guys have put so much work into it. It's brilliant.
It's neat. And the other thing, too, is that you can decide to make it a longer or shorter game.
Oh, great.
Right? So it's not like Monopoly where it has to go on for a week and a half.
Yeah, you can be part of it and just be like, all right, let's knock it back, and we're still there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's and we've had people that don't like card games. Specifically, we've asked them to come try it, and they love it.
That's great. How can people? You've got a Patreon account now?
No Patreon.
By the time this comes out, you'll have a Patreon account, right?
Well, we're launching on Kickstarter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. My bad.
The Patreon is probably a really good idea too.
Okay.
But right now we're kind of focused on Kickstarter. Because right now the games category, and this fills my heart with joy, the games category on Kickstarter is the #1 category.
Okay.
And it's not electronic games; it's all tabletop games.
Oh, that's great.
It's all card games. It's all miniature games.
Right.
Which means that all this stuff is coming back. And we couldn't be doing this at a better time.
Dude, I'll tell you, you walk around, one of the things that surprised the shit out of me, like, okay, Chapters and stuff like that have pulled most of their games out, but there are more, like, independent gaming stores in this city than there have ever been. Yeah.
But I think it comes back to that idea of, sitting down in person across from the other person and just having a great time.
I think that's
It's super simple, right? It is not like this really complex, drawn-out process. We're just sitting down.
How can people find your Kickstarter?
We will have a link.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The Kickstarter link goes live on September 15th.
This will be out after that.
Okay.
So or like within...
Ignore what I just said.
Right.
There will be a link to the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
You can find us on Facebook. It's Krishada Games. So
spell it.
Yeah, we took the first letters of our names. So Chris, K-R-I.
Yeah.
Sean,
and so
S-H-A.
very simple. We took the first spelling of our names, and of course you've got the most fucked up spelling of the word Chris known to man. It's with a K, not with a C.
It's with two Q's and a silent X.
Well, there's that.
Yeah.
Spell it again, because I stepped on you.
Krishada. Krishada Games. If you look at it, if you look Krishada Games under Facebook, you'll find us. It's also Krishada.com.
Perfect.
You can find it there too.
Dude, thanks for hanging out with me as always.
Oh man, this was my pleasure.
Such a pleasure.
Thanks for being into it.
Oh, dude, good.
Yeah, this
is fucking wait.
It's cool.
Thanks for hanging out with us. See you next time.
All right, folks, that'll do it for this episode of the AVB Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go down and click on the subscribe button to make sure that you can continue seeing our episodes as we put them out. We do a lot of videos, and there's a couple of them here that we hope you'll enjoy. There's one up there that we think you might like, and of course, there's one of our playlists down there for you. Make sure you say hello to some of our sponsors in the links down below while you're there, and of course, you can find links there to today's guest and all of our other social media. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.